everybody, and welcome to DocTalk. I'm Dr. Erin Knopf, and I am so excited to have Becky Henry joining for another episode. Becky, it is always a pleasure to have you here, and I'm just so excited for us to talk about family support for eating disorders. But first, please tell everybody watching more about you and what you do in the world.
Thanks so much, Dr. Knopf. I have been coaching parents and other family members of those with eating disorders since about 2005. I started my business in 2003, and I was actually coaching women in transition, which was kind of fun. But then I realized this was an unmet need. And as somebody who had a family member in my extended family who had an eating disorder, and I realized there wasn't anything for the families. So I created Network LLC, Eating Disorder Family Support, and I've been loving seeing the transformation in family caregivers ever since.
So important because we know that eating disorders are not just impacting the individual who is suffering with the condition, it is affecting everyone in their social and familial network.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So, knowing we're talking about family members, I think a lot of people would assume, okay, that's parents, right? Let's talk about parents. But family members include a lot of other roles too.
Oh, yes. Yes, I talked to college roommates, to siblings, to their actually adult children whose parents have eating disorder, your coworker. It's just anybody who cares about someone with an eating disorder is impacted because they're afraid for them. And then we're going to talk a lot about fear today and how that comes into the mix. But boy, have I seen the difference when the family caregivers have support for coping with their fear so that they can be regulated when they come and see all you wonderful professionals to help their family members.
I think you nailed it on the head as far as, in my head, I was thinking, what's the number one secret ingredient in helping families? And I think you're right. It is educating so they can have less fear because fear is more destabilizing for everyone than it is a helpful survival instinct in these instances. Would you say?
Absolutely. And the educating is one part, but as you and I both know, the way our human brains work is that when we're in a fear state, we truly only hear about every fifth word. So it's really learn anything when we're in a fear state. So let's say your person is in a treatment program and they're saying, "Hey, we have this training thing." You're only hearing every fifth word. You're not going to get it. In the meantime, your head's spinning, going, "Oh my gosh, but next week is my person still going to be alive?" So it's like a lot of what we do here at Hope Network is help the family caregiver to cope with the need to be heard, have their story listened to, and have someone validate their experience. That alone takes that fear down. And then we teach some skills for staying calm and practicing self care. And I know, like, I had a client years ago who said to me, "Becky, you talked to me about self care so much for like a year and a half. And then one day I finally got it while you were saying that." And she was so funny because she said, "I wanted you to tell me how to help my kiddo. You never did tell me how to help her, but when you helped me see that I had to fill my cup up, the kiddo started getting better."
Mm.
Good word.
Totally. I actually didn't know the fact that you only hear every fifth word when you're in a fear state. I've never heard that stat, but yet it makes so much sense and seems very intuitive. So I'm going to have to keep that in my psychoeducation toolbox. I think what you're saying is so powerful, and people don't always realize how important this is. I recall, when working at higher level of care and someone is dropping their kid off, we would say, "Hey, this has been hard. This has been really rough. We are going to take good care of your child. We are going to give you now space to take a break, have a respite, recover yourself." Because truly, the only thing that comes to mind is you have to put your oxygen mask on first. You cannot be that pillar of strength and resilience and hope and optimism, even if you're depleted.
Truly. And I wish that I could have a magic wand moment for every time people like yourself have said that very wonderful thing to family members. They all come to me and say, "How am I supposed to do that? I'm an absolute wreck. I'm exhausted beyond words. I feel like I've been erased and I have nothing left and I'm just running on adrenaline." And he's like, "How, if you're running on adrenaline and fear, do you say, 'Oh, okay, I'm going to go home and just be in my garden, rest and take hot baths'?" No, they're still running from the tiger that's chasing their babies.
Totally.
We've got to get out of that hyper alert state of mama bear, that mama bear state, even if you're siblings. So for the professionals listening to this, it's like, yeah, we want to just say, oh, my caregiver, go on your way and just chill now for a while. We got your kiddo or your spouse or your whatever, their sister, mother. It's just think about it. If you were trying to save that person from an attacking bear, you wouldn't just be able to go sit in the book.
No, no, you would need usually more support yourself. And I think this is where I still lament that the stigma around mental health in our Western culture, because there's still this necessity most people seem to have that unless I'm literally falling to pieces, I'm okay and I don't need therapy. Hello, how beautiful is it to have your own personal coach and sounding board and support human in the world by seeing a therapist? Also, not all therapists are created equal when it comes to this particular issue. And I know you have also found in your own experience that having an eating disorder informed provider is so important. But I wonder if you can really say more about why, like what experience you've had and seen that informs that perspective.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, Dr. Knopf, because I have talked to so many parents who have had wonderful providers, and it is a game changer. So, providers out there, if you are trained in eating disorders, thank you. And if you are not, please refer these folks to somebody who's trained in eating disorders. Because what the families have told me for over 20 years now is that when they've gone to providers just out of desperation, because that's who their insurance company gave them the name of or whatever, they lived in a country where they didn't have access to someone specifically trained in eating disorders, they found that no harm was done.
So, this is again when the parent or the sibling was seeing their own therapist, perhaps. They
Both.
experience both. Okay. Say more, please.
Any of the family members need to be seeing a clinician, whatever type of clinician it might be, who's trained in eating disorders, and the person with the eating disorder absolutely has to have somebody with trained in eating disorders. It's like if you had a family member who had a broken foot from a skiing accident, you wouldn't take them to, let's say, a brain cancer specialist, right?
Dog specialty.
Yeah, wrong end of the body, wrong specialty, all the things. And cancer specialists might be great at what they do, but not fixing a broken foot. So it makes sense that you don't send your person with an eating disorder to a therapist, doctor, psychiatrist, et cetera, who hasn't had specific training in eating disorders. We've seen family do that. It literally has done more harm.
What has the experience been for these family members, though, seeking their own care with support and therapy? When you say harm also happens there, what kind of things have they experienced?
This is like it brings back all these sad, sad stories I've heard for over 20 years of just being gaslit at the very least and really blamed at the worst and not helped. It's just people have been told, oh, you should just let go or just tell them to eat a cheeseburger or it's good that they're getting skinny because fat people shouldn't be fat or whatever nonsense about weight stigma they have going on. Just such egregious things. So yeah, I'm almost speechless thinking about it because it just sounds insane, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, that's great.
Yeah,
They,
seeing a licensed professional telling you something so incredibly unhelpful.
yeah, they're basically giving a prescription for an eating disorder at times. Some parents have been told you must not love your child enough. Our model would be working. There are lots of different models for treating eating disorders, and there is not one, as you know, that works for every single individual. Everybody's different. Everybody's eating disorder is different. There's so many eating disorders, and what works for one person at this stage in their treatment might not work for them at this stage. And so when the families are going for their own support to clinicians, it's important too that clinicians aren't too married to their model because maybe the family has tried them. And that doesn't mean that there's anybody to blame. I always think of like cancer treatment again. It's like if you were treating brain cancer, you would use the most evidence-based treatment for brain cancer of that for that particular person. You wouldn't maybe treat them for bone cancer.
But even with that evidence based treatment, not all cancers are the same and it may not work. So I think you bring up a really good point that in science, in medicine, especially, we are always trying to use evidence guided, evidence based principles. What's the gold standard? I mean, that is always the first point of contact or point of the first tool to use. And we now know for eating disorders, especially for adolescents, that has always been said to be family based therapy. But there are a lot of very real human reasons that it may not be the best modality and it may actually be harmful for the patient and the family to stick to an FBT manualized approach to care.
Yeah, yeah. I think of many families who've told me, they did it for a year or 2 years and then were shamed that it wasn't working. And it's like, I don't know that there's any treatment that after 2 years you wouldn't say, maybe it's time to try something different. This isn't working. Without any blame on the practitioner, the caregiver, person with the eating disorder. It doesn't mean anybody failed. It just means that particular modality isn't necessarily working at this stage of treatment. It might work again later. It might not. But yeah, to your point, I've talked to single parents for it. There's no way I can work 3 jobs and feed my child 6 times a day. It just is.
Exactly. For those of you that don't know what FBT is, you can look it up. There are some really clear principles, and it is a wonderful program when a family has the capacity to utilize it because of resources, time, financial support. Parents who are working 2 full-time jobs cannot do FBT as much as they might want to and might even promise they can. There's going to be a lot of misses in that because they cannot be the champions of the meal plan in the way that it is prescribed. But truly, when I think about what is this really desperate need to be using a manual, have a guidepost, I think it really even speaks to provider fear and anxiety. We also feel like we need a structure to hold on to and a structure to build out a plan so that this isn't just us blowing in the wind. And so I think for everyone out there, let's really be in touch with what is driving us to have rigidity, inflexibility around any of our perspectives at any given time. Because as you said, flexibility would be best for and would be actually the secret sauce to finding recovery here.
Yeah, yeah. And from the family caregiver end, the secret sauce I've also seen is when the family caregivers have somebody who's their person that's in their corner. Muhammad Ali might have been the greatest fighter on earth, and he had a coach. And when the family caregivers have someone in their corner cheering them on, listening to their sadness, their pain, their fear, validating them, teaching them self-care, teaching them how to set boundaries, how to listen, how to find time to do those little tiny micro moments of care. Because sometimes all it is sitting on the toilet and doing your breathing. If you're doing 6 meals a day and working a full-time job and taking care of other kids and you've got parent with Alzheimer's, guess what? 2 minutes on the toilet is you're it. You're it. That's it. You know?
Totally. Totally.
So I love that piece too that you said about not every family can do this. And truly, like I've had clients who are the 40 something sibling of somebody with an eating disorder. Well, that's not going to be appropriate to go do an FET with your 40 something sibling who lives in another state. It's just not feasible.
Yeah, that actually is completely impeccable by the um, parameters of FVP.
Yeah. So, in that situation, yeah, that's not the gold standard of treatment. But even when you've got a, let's say, 16 to 26-year-old, it might not be.
Totally.
So many parents have told me specifically with family based therapy that they've been shamed for not doing it. And it just breaks my heart because parents do love their children and want them to be well. And I've had parents who told me they were accused of having Munchausen by proxy. I mean, it just blows my mind. I'm like, we're trying to save kids' lives here.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, what? And I haven't heard yet of spouses or siblings being accused of that, but it wouldn't surprise me anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I will admit I have my own cynical perspective, not all the time, but from experience as a provider, it's not common. But I have seen some exceptions. And you're right. The general expectation is parents are desperately trying to care for their kid, and they may not know how to do it the right way because they don't know what they don't know. And frankly, uninformed providers also don't know what they don't know. So there's a lot of education that needs to happen. There's a lot of unpacking too of things you thought were facts that were not. At the end of the day, we live in a culture where intentional weight loss is the gold standard of health, but that's the number one risk factor for developing an eating disorder. So we, by default, are already at an, odds headbutting situation.
Oh my goodness. I've heard, I feel like I've heard everything, but just want to think I've heard everything I heard words. Yeah. How many people argue a person should go on a diet because they're in a larger body, or if they don't have an eating disorder because they're not very, very, emaciated body, or they couldn't have an eating disorder because they're in a brown or black body, or that they're male, or whatever. And they're just, I mean, it's unbelievable how little training has been done for clinical providers, much less the general public.
Uh-huh.
When parents or siblings or spouses or partners are confronted with this, oftentimes they'll take the weight loss as, oh, this is a good thing because everybody's doctor is saying, oh, everyone should lose weight. They're going to die next week. And it's like, actually, no. Like, I always think of, I had a friend who was dying of stomach cancer and leaving 3 small children, and she had been in a larger body and she was losing weight and she was getting complimented on that weight loss and she was dying. And it just shredded my heart every single time. I was like, she's dying of people. She's dying. She is not getting help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it is so oxymoronic. Can I say it that way? When
Yeah.
even other clinicians make jokes of, I wish I could have an eating disorder. They tell me this when I tell them what I do for my career as an integrated physician, that I work with people with eating disorders holistically. They're like, oh, sometimes I wish I could have an eating disorder. Why is that a common casual comment that someone makes and it's seen as funny, even welcomed? I don't get it.
I've had to stop telling people on airplanes what I do because I heard that statement so many times that I couldn't take it. And then being trapped on an airplane next to somebody who thinks it is great to be losing weight because you're dying just amazes me.
Well,
So,
and
yeah.
this is that other hidden burden that families are dealing with when they are trying to support a loved one with an eating disorder. They are unable to find the same community support that they would have had for almost any other condition. Sometimes, as scary as it is to even think about, it seems like a family with a loved one with schizophrenia has a lot more community support available. And not always. Again, we have a long way to go in this country, but that's a whole other doc talk. I just find it amazing that these individuals tell me they can't talk to their friends. They can't talk to their other family members or their parents, if the grandparents are still alive. They have no one who gets this and understands that this is a threat to their loved one's life.
Mhm.
They
Yeah,
never get that same vigilance and support and rallying cry from the rest of their larger community.
exactly. Exactly. I think all the folks, you're a spouse, a partner, a sibling, coworker, a college roommate, or a parent of somebody with an eating disorder, it's so isolating. That's one of the biggest challenges is the isolation and the worldwide fat stigma, fat phobia. Like when the person starts to gain weight, then there's that. And then they've got maybe the family caregiver has their own doctor telling them, oh, you person have X disease, and we think you should lose weight to fix that disease. But the person down the hall who has the same disease is in a smaller body, and they're not being told that.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, something. So it makes the burden so much more because it's like you're dealing with this illness that the outcomes aren't great. So of course you have fear, right? I mean, when
The worst case outcomes are not great. I actually want to remind everyone recovery is possible. The
yes,
majority of people do
it is.
recover in 5 years of treatment. And it is
Yes.
also still the second highest mortality of all mental health illnesses, second only to opiate addiction. That's
So
pretty
yeah,
darn serious.
it is. And so when people hear that, they're just like, oh my goodness, I'm watching a loved one, not be able to do a basic um act of keeping their body alive, feeding it is so hard, whether they're in a larger body, average size body, or a smaller body, it doesn't matter. That's terrifying. And so um, it's fascinating and I guess rewarding for me to see the family caregivers learn how to do their own parallel process, I always call it, because the loved one was doing hopefully treatment and didn't care. Some wonderful folks like Barry. And then the family caregivers doing their process alongside them. The odds of the person with eating disorder recovery just go up exponentially. And I've seen it over and over. No?
Totally.
Um,
Totally. When we talk about the root of people being stuck in this condition and even the family and what they're trying to hold, it is this fear of shame and guilt. And it becomes its own thing of, no, no, everything's fine. Let me we can make this better. We can make this better. There's a lot of fixing urges. There's a lot of reassurance urges. And frankly, sometimes it can just be, this is hard, but I'm with you and we're in this together. But the only way a loved one of a patient can feel that way is to be fortified with their own support, period. You can't regulate and show up as someone's champion if you are literally freaking out inside.
exactly, exactly. So yeah, I have had so many families say to me, well, we took our person to treatment program X and they said to us, okay, now it's time for you to go take care of you. And yet they're just like flying on adrenaline and fear. And like I said earlier, if you've got a bear chasing you, you're not just going to go after bears and sit down and like have a cup of tea and read a book and feel lovely.
Yeah. It would take some time and a little regulation. So, if you want some coping skill tips, you can also find that on Barry's YouTube channel. There's lots
Yes.
of quick coping skills there. But I'm curious, how can people find you and your coaching support to really help illuminate this road and give it more? I think the word I'm looking for is just a grounding where they know like they are walking on firm soil in the right direction for the right purpose.
Yeah, they can go to my website at beckyhenry.com or eatingdisorderfamilysupport.com, whichever, they go to the same place. And then on my Instagram, which is also connected to the Very Health Instagram page, I also have Facebook and LinkedIn. And in our weekly group support, we talk about how do we stay grounded? How do we get grounded in the first place and get re-grounded over and over? And this week, tonight, actually, we're talking about high functioning codependency. A lot of these folks, you look at the personality traits and characteristics of a person with eating disorder, oftentimes, as we know, these are very genetic illnesses, and it could just be traits of being high functioning or perfectionistic come through, or really, really smart. I don't know if I've ever had a client whose person with eating disorder isn't just absolutely really intelligent. Every single time, they're super intelligent.
Or emotionally tuned in and sensitive. I'm super feelers, perfectionists, as you said. All of these people have amazing traits that bring them success, but in the right scenario with the right influences, the eating disorder is like, oh, I'll take it from here, please. Thank you.
Yeah. So you've got these high functioning family members, and it can become really easy when you've got somebody whose, life is on the line to become high functioning codependent. So we're actually going to be discussing that topic tonight and how, being in recovery from that is such a gift and recognizing that it doesn't have to be, but
Amazing.
it was just a natural thing that happened as a result of trying, seeing someone who life was ebbing away, and you never felt like their job to save them.
Which is really scary and a hard thing to own for anyone, even those of us equipped. It is a lot. But we are here to empower and inspire everyone. It can be done. It does get better. And again, people do recover.
Yeah, yeah. And I have a blog on my website too where I talk about when you were saying that. I was thinking about the EFFT or emotion focused family therapy that I got trained in and teach a lot of the clients and the people in the group support. Validating your loved one in recovery can be such a powerful tool because we don't have to agree. They're saying the moon is chartreuse today. Okay, tell me more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all say in today's day and age, validation of anybody in distress can be such a gift. And so, what the doctor ordered or forgot to order.
Right, right. We don't have to agree with their perspective. Validate their experience. And that can open up more conversation. and more space for being in relationship in a way that we can regulate together.
I love that. And that is a perfect place to end for today. So thank you again so much, Becky, for joining. We'll have more information in the caption. But I'm Dr. Erin Knopf, and hopefully we'll see you for another Doc Talk.